It's concerning when activism becomes an aesthetic. Many times it starts off with good intentions. And I thought that this was a good little quote that kind of illustrates this idea of activism as an aesthetic. And I've just amended it to fit this theme. Some of y'all get into activism out of hatred for the system and not compassion for oppressed peoples. And I think that is a fundamental distinction. I think as a generation, this is something we need to be wary of because just like the trends are coming and going when it comes to fashion and when it comes to music and when it comes to tastes and all of that stuff, it feels like it can come and go with issues. But the reality is that these issues actually are ongoing. They're not just a seasonal moment in time. And so the way that we individually choose to engage in those things is up to us and it needs to be sustainable. I want to speak to my early experiences as a pre-uni and then uni student. I got involved with, for example, the Socialist Club, and I got on their mailing list and still receive emails to this day. I connected in the first instance because it was value aligned. I could find belonging with the group, and my social justice inclinations were definitely nurtured. When I went into my first year of uni, I was in the arts and humanities space, and so I was surrounded by people who were liberal, and I enjoyed the debates. I enjoyed the critical perspectives. There was also this make a positive mark kind of energy that these people had, including myself, wanting to stand with the oppressed or be a positive slash useful member of the different oppressed slash marginalized groups that some of us represented. But I want to think deeper into this idea that I have experienced and I have seen other people participating in, and that is the permission to opt out. I think the rise of soft life content, the rise of this girly content, travel content, fashion content, makeup content, and just creators who lean more into their hobbies and interests, I think this is because there is this desire to escape from what is inherently political about spaces that heavily focus on contemporary issues. I think that everything is inherently political, right? But some of us don't want to eat, breathe, and sleep politics and let that become our entire identities. We don't want to be put into a box and have our level of care stereotyped by what we choose to wear and look like. Also, there's the perspective of not wanting to lose life and freedom. And I think this is a really important thing to emphasize because I think for me, I was really moved and deeply affected as a teen when I learned about the civil rights movement and I was old enough to actually understand some of what had happened. I remember just seeing footage where young people that are the age that you and I are now were sitting in, they were marching, and they were faced with such brutality that to me, I think there is a real question of activism and authenticity. The people who participated could really resonate with the cause because that was speaking directly to their experience and future. During 2021, 2022, where the Black Lives Matter movement really surfaced in a new way, especially with technology being a new factor in that, I really witnessed a feeling of a lack of safety. And I actually received a note that was quite threatening. And this was around that time where the society was supposedly meant to be moving in more progressive directions. But in fact, I would like to just emphasize when I speak about not wanting to lose life and freedom, participation in activist things like protests or boycotts and things like that, it's not safe for everybody to do that. And whether or not it is safe is up to the individual experiencing their own reality to determine, and not to be thrust upon them. There's also this idea of not wanting to constantly be judged by your solidarity metrics. Have you attended protests? Are you boycotting brands, etc.? And there are other ways to be quote unquote for the cause. There is also this fear I see among groups that may be classified as oppressed or marginalized, that within there is a fear of no longer being relatable because you've quote unquote leveled up or quote unquote made it out. And I think that it's actually not helpful to judge people by outwardly what they're doing, because again, we fall into this idea of activism becoming performative and therefore an aesthetic. There's also the reality we need to contend with, that there is a lot of hypocrisy and impossibility of being able to stand in complete solidarity with a cause. Privilege is going to get in the way, for example, class. There are some causes we might resonate with that will never be able to actually appreciate what it feels like to go through that cause. And that doesn't mean we can't be allies, but it just means that we need to be really careful about what we're judging other people for doing or not doing. I also think that there is this phenomenon of people, including myself. There's been times where maybe I've resonated with an issue, but I've had to really assess, is my lack of lived experience obscuring my ability to see the nuances that come with the particular issue? And I think this is something that needs to really be recognized as well. When we're living in contemporary societies, in some ways we're going to be part of the oppression, whether we like it or not. And being made to feel guilty or ashamed for your what may be deemed inaction is not the cure to the problem either. I want to just kind of end with this list of little acts that to me demonstrate resistance that is still valid. And I say resistance that is still valid because I think that activism can become an aesthetic. It can become something that you're doing because you just want to be seen to be doing something. But the intention is truly what matters. And also, like I mentioned before, some of us really do need to assess the safety and the capacity we actually have to engage in certain demonstrations of solidarity. So for me, I wanted to create this list because as someone who has felt unsafe at communal gatherings or felt a pressure to show solidarity in a way that didn't align with me as a person, I think it's great to remind ourselves of things that also demonstrate a kind of resistance. So, quietly comforting someone who has been mistreated. You could be a frontliner in that way, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in the community. Asking someone simply, "Are you okay?" and then being able to provide that support. Excelling in your workplace as someone from an oppressed/marginalized group so that you are in a position of power and influence. We can't all be refusing to climb ladders or achieve places of influence and leadership because that is seen as going against the cause. When you have an opportunity to shine, incorporating others in that moment. So it could be the brands that you wear at a award ceremony. It could be the guests that you bring into the room, the thank yous and credits and the people that you shout out. And we see this in award ceremonies and we see this at presentations and events. That optics and those moments where the spotlight is on also are really strategic moments where you have the power, you have the microphone, so you might as well use it then. Also, showing up to work every day despite everything you're battling at the workplace or at home and in the society. It's not all these grand gestures to show that you are aware of what's happening. You yourself might be actually, like I've said, from a quote unquote oppressed or marginalized group, and just the very act of stepping outside is a form of resistance. Also, making time to prioritize the activities you want to do, visit the places you want to go, and see the people who make you happy. Because joy is also something that I saw during the Black Lives Matter movement, people really in my communities wanting to claim. We don't want to just be the oppressed. We don't want to just be the victim. We don't just want to be the sources of wisdom on how we can now create more inclusive and equitable societies. We also want to thrive. We want to bloom. We want to grow in positive directions. And to do that, sometimes we actually need to lean into that softness. We need to lead into that joy. And we need to remember who we are, where we come from, and the strength about that, the positives of that. Learning a language other than English. And I created a video, or I will create a video that kind of speaks on the power of not being for everyone, not being universal, visiting non-tourist areas on holiday, incorporating cultural attire into your workplace wardrobe, being part of and accepting invitations to spaces and environments that you've been taught you don't belong in. So a question for you to end this video: have you ever felt pressured to lean into an activist aesthetic? Did you grow tired with performative activism, and how do you live your life in such a way where you still maintain your values but still engage in the world with an optimistic view? Has anyone ever told you how to act or be? So these are just some thoughts and food for thought. It'd be really interesting to hear your point of time, your point of view. And this is a space where we exist in the nuance and the gray and the in-between. And you're very welcome here. Memo Kwaba, I welcome you. Madasipa, thank you so much. And Yabeshia, I'll see you later in the next video. Take care.